You're probably more brilliant than you give yourself credit for. There is a hidden genius in you that even you might be blind to. So let's shine a light on it today. And if you stick with me for the next few minutes, you'll see parts of yourself and your brilliance that you probably never noticed before. Welcome to the Everyday Genius Show. I'm Taryn Voget, and let's start this episode by unpacking what I call the paradox of genius. Now, over the years, I've had a lot of people come through my genius lab, truly some of the world's best at what they do. And I've been able to deconstruct on a very subconscious level how they do it, how they get their results. One thing I noticed early on was that the more brilliant somebody was and the more naturally gifted they were at something, the less they thought their gifts and abilities were special. And that's what I call the paradox of genius. And I'll never forget the moment where I had that epiphany. I was interviewing a kid whisperer, truly this woman who's absolutely incredible at working with kids. And we were unpacking her strategy for how she communicates with kids, especially in those moments where the kid had been naughty or misbehaved or gotten in trouble or done something quote unquote wrong or bad. And she says, well, and after we unpacked it, she said, well, before I talk to the child, I go through a list of all of their greatness, of all the things that makes them great, of when they were loving, when they were kind, when they were special, when they did something nice for somebody else. I just make a list of who they are and all of their greatness. And then I go and talk to the child from that space. And I looked at her and she says, why are you looking at me funny? And I said, well, that's really special. And she says, well, doesn't everybody do that? And I said, no, no, they don't. That's just a really cool thing that you do. And that's when I realized that she just assumed because it was so easy and natural for her that it would just be easy and natural for everybody else. And her strategies like that were so brilliant. We ended up writing a book together called Raise a Happy Child and Be Happy Too, Simply Genius Parenting Strategies That Work. And that's available on Amazon if you're interested. And it's really a book of her strategies where time and time again in the process of interviewing her, she would say to me, well, doesn't everybody do that? And I said, no, that's why we're writing the book, to share your genius with the world. But that is the paradox of genius, is that it was so easy for her that she just assumed it was easy for everybody else. And that is what I've discovered is often where someone's gifts and genius hide, which is like, think about this for yourself. What comes naturally to you or easy to you or that you enjoy or that maybe you even do a little bit better than most? And do you see that as special? Because usually that is where someone's genius hides. It's like obvious to you and you just assume it's obvious to everybody else. Or you might even ask yourself like, God, this is so obvious. Why is everybody else not seeing what I'm seeing? That's often where your genius is and where your genius hides. So hold on to that because we're going to unpack that a little bit and you'll see what I mean about how you're more brilliant than you think as we keep going. So I created the Genius Lab in order to deconstruct how people do what they do. And one thing that was obvious to me was that people who are really good at what they do don't often know actually how they do it. And what happens is that when we get good at something, we start to process information really quickly and we move something that might have been conscious when we were first learning it, then we master it. So we move it to the subconscious. And then we go on to learn the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But all of that we once learned at some point becomes subconscious and we just start doing it. And when somebody reaches a level of mastery, most of what they're doing is not only subconscious, but it happens so fast. And so in my Genius Lab, we take that split second of how somebody's thinking and unpack it into 30, 40, or even 50 steps. And that's often how many it is that just happens in a split second in someone's mind. And that is really the difference that makes a difference. And this is why people that are really good at what they do often have a hard time getting their students to replicate their results. It's that they don't really know everything that they're doing because it's happening in their mind so fast, they can't even slow it down. And so by unpacking it and looking at all of those micro steps, you can actually then see the step by step that they're doing that's really quick in their mind. But when you slow it down, you're then able to replicate it a little bit better and a little bit easier. And then also when people get interviewed and they see how they actually do it, what ends up happening is they end up getting better at what they do because now we've taken something subconscious and brought it into their conscious awareness. And so the Genius Lab is where I've really learned that there are a couple of things that make people truly exceptional at what they do, and that if you can learn them, you can unlock more of your own genius and shortcut your learning curve. So, there is a difference between what I call content and strategy. Now, let's just take something like kind of obvious, like wine tasting. Now, I've had one of the top wine tasters in the world in my Genius Lab, and we deconstructed how he goes about analyzing the structure and quality of a wine. I do that because he's always like swirling his wine glass. And in order to be a top wine taster, there is a lot of content you need to know. What are the grapes? What are the regions? What are the varietals? What are the blends? All of that, what I call content, things you can learn often in a book. But then there is strategy. Like, how do you take all of that and go about analyzing a wine? Now, strategy is the how. How do you do it? What are you trying to optimize for? What are you trying to achieve? What are the steps you're taking to do it? And often when someone gets really good, that strategy is what happens so quick in their mind. And it's something that they do so fast in their mind that allows them to get their results. And it's often a repeatable strategy that when you unpack it, you realize there's a structure to what they're doing. So, strategy is the difference that makes a difference. And people that are good at what they do often have a hard time teaching their strategy because they don't really know it. But there are two parts to strategy that really, in that whole canon, are, I would say, maybe the most significant parts, which is number one, what they're optimizing for. And that's what I call like, what are their goals and how are they thinking differently about it than anybody else is? And then what are their beliefs? Like, what do they believe about themselves or the world or reality that allows them to do what they do at a high level? Because even if you learned the content and even if you learned some of the strategy, unless you're optimizing for similar things or you have similar goals, and unless you have similar or other powerful beliefs, it's very difficult to get results that maybe someone at the world's best level is getting, whether it's in sales or gardening or whatever discipline you're interested in. So that's what we do in the Genius Lab as we unpack it. But I'm going to show you how you can kind of unpack yourself. But first, let me give you a couple examples of what I mean by that. So let's talk about the kid whisperer again. She's an incredible communicator. And so what she's optimizing for is to hold someone in their greatness. And she says, I always want to show up knowing that someone feels respected. They feel like I'm in integrity, that I'm being honest, that I am holding them in their greatness. She's like, that's important to me. And she says, but also I'm communicating in a way that they can't argue with what I'm saying, which is a really interesting thing she's optimizing for. So this is actually true with adults as well. She'll go into a conversation and the way she architects the conversation is that she makes points that you just can't argue with. And that's what she's optimizing for. And I think about myself when I go into hard conversations, I'm not necessarily optimizing for that, but her strategy is so good that that's how she gets such great results in difficult conversations. And so unless you're optimizing for the same thing, it's hard to get those same results. One of her core beliefs is that, having difficult conversations actually strengthens a relationship. And I don't know that most people believe that to be true, but she does. Another one is I work with a guy that is an incredible fundraiser. He raises hundreds of millions of dollars for investment funds. And I often ask him, like, how do you do it, especially when you're raising money for this thing that might not be that great? He says, you can raise money for anything. You can raise money for anything. And that's one of his core beliefs. You can raise money for anything. And that's what allows him to do what he does at such a high level, is that he has that belief. So when we're deconstructing ourselves, part of what we want to do is think about what are we optimizing for and what are our beliefs. And so how do you deconstruct yourself and your own genius? This is what we do in my Genius Lab. So the way to deconstruct your genius or anyone else's is to put yourself back in a time when you did something at a really high level, whether you're a chef or a gardener or you communicate with kids or you're in sales or you're writing copy or whatever it is that you think you're good at, talking to a friend, whatever. Put yourself at a time when you were really, really good at it and take yourself back there like you're reliving the moment, because this is really important in order to deconstruct yourself. It's not what you think you're doing, it's what you're actually doing. So take yourself back to that moment. And then ask yourself, in this moment, what am I trying to achieve in this situation? What are my goals? So, like for me, I often do private sessions with people and help them really understand what their gifts and their genius are and help them launch something new in the world, whether it's a career or business or whatever. And so if I take myself back to a moment where I was good at this, what am I trying to achieve? Well, I'm trying to really see their true genius. What is they uniquely good at? What are their true gifts and abilities? And I'm trying to optimize for how do I see what would excite them? How do I help them tease out of them what would excite them? Because that's a real key part of doing anything magical in the world. And how do I help them see that this is possible for them? It's like these are all the things I'm trying to optimize for. And just to give you an example, so what are you trying to optimize for? Like my mother is a fabulous gardener. I mean, she creates these masterpieces over acres. And one thing that I know she tries to optimize for is I want to create a garden that's beautiful year round. That's an example of a goal. Like, she's optimizing for creating a garden that looks pretty in the winter and the summer because she says gardens are so easy to look good in the summer. They're much harder to look good in the winter, but she wants her gardens to look good in the winter. So that's what she's optimizing for when she plants her garden. So just think about what you're good at. And the first few goals are really, really easy. You'll get 5 just like that. The next 10 are hard, but here's where you really want to push yourself. Put yourself back to doing the thing that you're good at, and then just keep writing. What am I trying to achieve? What am I trying to achieve? What am I trying to achieve? What are my goals? What am I optimizing for? When you get to goals number 20 to 25 and get to that many, you have to dig really deep within yourself. And that's usually when the most brilliant goals are revealed. They're really subconscious ones. And so that is one way where you can see what you're optimizing for, because here's the interesting thing with genius. And this is why I say you're more brilliant than you realize. Whatever we're optimizing for, whatever our goals are, and they're usually subconscious, what we're doing or the steps we take are always in support of achieving those goals. And so then we build all these strategies around how we achieve those goals. Like one of this kid whisperer's goals was, how do I hold this? I want to hold the child in their greatness and have them feel respected. And so her whole strategy was, how do I do that? Well, she creates this whole list of all these moments that she remembers them being great in before she talks to this kid who's having an utter meltdown. And so that's the how. So we use our goals as what we're trying to achieve. And then as steps of how we do it is how we go about achieving that goal. And people that get really good at what they do are operating from what I call really high quality, very optimized goals. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, what do you believe to be true as you're doing the thing? Like, to give you an example, I deconstructed and interviewed an animal communicator. And one thing that she believes is that animals have a consciousness and they have wisdom to share and that they are her equals. And so that allows her to go into a space where she can actually communicate with animals in that way. But she believes that animals are her equals and they have wisdom to share. And that's really important because that belief is what allows her to do what she does. Like if I just use myself as an example, one of my core beliefs is that everybody, and I mean everybody, has a unique genius and a unique gift to share in this world. And it's just a matter of teasing it out or uncovering it if somebody doesn't know or they haven't explored it yet. But it's inside everybody. That's just like a core belief that I have. And that's, I think, what allows me to do my work. So what is it for you? Like, what's your core belief that you have that allows you to do what you do well at some level? And that's important. Now, our beliefs often get better over time as well. So we can kind of upgrade our beliefs as we get better at something, or we get more evidence to reinforce our belief. We can then kind of upgrade our beliefs. So those are 2 ways to kind of think about looking at your own gifts and abilities and your own genius and kind of unpacking yourself a little bit. Now, here's the other cool thing. If there's somebody better than you at what you're doing, I don't know, gardening, being a chef, communicating, whatever it is, whatever your genius is, you can actually deconstruct them. And often you will get a lot of just gem information if you ask them those questions. Now, here's the trick. Ask them to think about a time they were at their best doing what they did, or be on site with them in some way while they're doing it. And then ask them, what are your goals? What are you trying to optimize for? What are you trying to achieve right now? And get a list of 20 to 25 out of them. And then also ask them, what do you believe to be true about this reality in order for you to get these kind of results or do what you do? And just those 2 things will get you so much great information. And when you can adopt someone else's goals or see what they are, you can often then up your own level much quicker, because now you're operating from a slightly higher quality goal set. And that's how we get better. So I hope that shines a light on your genius. And if you take a moment to really unpack your own gifts and your own abilities, even if you don't think you have one, You do. I promise you do. You have gifts, you have abilities, you have a genius and just kind of thinking about it and unpacking it a little bit will bring what's in the subconscious to your conscious awareness and make you even better at what you do. As always, thank you for letting me share my greatest passion with you, which is helping you on your journey to genius. I'd love to hear your genius, your gifts, your abilities, or what you discovered about yourself in the comments. So please share. I do read all the comments. And also, if you're interested in this, go and look at my episode about 5 strategies of genius. That will help you even further kind of unpack how you do what you do or think about how to interview others so that you can up your own level. Hit the subscribe button, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.